Hey, what's up, stringlings? We're back once again with another addition to the Great Canadian Pedalboard. We're going to be talking about the Master Effects Martyr Distortion. Let's check it out. As I was building this board and selecting pedals to go on it, what I really wanted to do was make it as complete and flexible and usable a pedal board as I possibly could. And to that end, I was looking for something that I could use as both a really good preamp if the winner wanted to use it as a preamp pedal, or as a distortion pedal if they were going into the front of an amp. And I think the Martyr really fits that bill quite nicely, and we're going to hear it today in both positions. It is just here on the desktop, but let me just tell you a little bit about this pedal if you haven't heard about it already. It's based on the classic 90s Valvestate from Marshall. Not just any Valvestate, but the 8100. And the 8100 is known to have been the kind of tone, the heart of the tone for bands like Death and Meshuggah, who else? In Flames, Static X. Quite a few bands used this as the foundation for their tone. The Valvestate was a solid state amplifier that mimicked a valve amp or a tube amp, sort of similar to what the PV trans tube technology does. And one of the issues that we keep hearing about with the Valvestate, especially the 8100, is it's really hard to get that tone if that's the sound you're looking for, because they weren't terribly well built. Apparently a lot of people had problems with these things breaking down, so there aren't very many of them left. You're going to have a hard time finding the 8100 on the market, just because it didn't last long enough. That was got 20, almost 30 years ago in some cases. So what Master Effects has done is they've taken the tone of the Valvestate and they've put it into the Martyr as a pedal. And this is the newest version. This is the version that came out in 2021. It's the most recent version. One of my favorite features on this pedal is that the switch it doesn't click. It's whisper quiet, which is nice. We don't get a pop when we switch it on. Very cool. And it has all of the controls you would expect to see on more of a preamp type pedal as opposed to a distortion. Notably, this contour control. The contour control behaves sort of like a saturation. So normally we would have the usual things that we would expect, right? Gain and then a 3-band EQ and a level. The contour control gives it that little bit more flexibility in terms of how you're going to color it, and that's where we're going to hear what happens when we plug this in. So I'm going to go ahead and just get this set up on two separate amps. One is actually just using this as a preamp, so that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with the Martyr as a preamp pedal, and doing so we're going to go into a pair of IRs. These are actually Glenn Fricker's vintage 30 IRs that he produced back in 2022, and one has got a 440 mic on it and the other has got an SM57, so I'm pairing them up, so we've got kind of both of those mic sounds set up in front of the IR, and then after that we're going to run it into the front of who else, the Humble. I want to hear what it sounds like going into the front of an amp where it's not acting as the preamp but acting as a distortion pedal. So this should be really interesting. Let's check these out. So starting off, we're going into just an IR set, two IRs, I think in an angle cab. I'm not sure how Glenn set these up. These are Glenn Fricker's vintage 30s that he gave away actually at the end of last year. I have no idea if they're still available, but check out his website. And we're using the same guitar as always, the Steve Barrett Custom Lunotar with the Peg City Super Clutch humbuckers. I'm going to stay on humbucker mode because we're doing distortion, and who doesn't love distortion with humbuckers? So this is going straight in as the preamp into cabinets, right? So the clean tone is about as flat as you're going to get anywhere. I have everything on the pedal at noon. So everything is dialed right up the middle. You can hear it click on. No, you can't, because it doesn't have a click. It's a silent switch, which again, I really like. So with everything at noon, this is what our low E sort of sounds like. Kind of classic. It sounds like a dry Marshall. It actually sounds really close to a dry Marshall. So how do we get some body and some interest into this? Well, first thing, of course, we know we can take this gain down and we can get a little bit more bass and a little bit more treble. So we have that little bit of kind of tubey style cleanup, not a ton because we're going through a pedal, and they don't always react that way. But what happens when we take the gain to the top, which is where most people are going to want their distortion pedal? You can run this, as I said, as a preamp. Take the gain down and put another distortion in front of it if you wanted to do that, or you can use it as a distortion pedal with the gain turned all the way up. Again, sounds pretty decent. One thing you'll note, and I may have noted this in some other videos, you don't want in a mix situation to have a lot of low end and a lot of really hairy distortion, because you're going to lose the sound of the guitar in the mix quite a bit. So having this nice kind of crisp tube sounding distortion is really nice. But let's take the contour control down to the bottom and see what happens. A little bit mushy, right? So that to me has a really classic, almost 80s metal tone to it. So you get that that bite, but it's not overly hairy. It's a very cool sound. I like that a lot, actually. And that's with the treble and bass almost all the way up. If we roll this contour the rest of the week, you can hear how it sweeps. I'm just going to play and roll the contour up. So do you hear how it just got really distorted but dropped those mids? So what do you do when the mids are dropped? Well, you've got to get more treble in. Throw in a little bit more bass. That's starting to sound familiar. Yeah. Take that bass back a little bit. Contour down. So really a lot of range here for this. Like as a preamp, there's a lot you can pull with this. So I actually really like this. Now I'm kind of an old-fashioned thrash guy, so I do like a good scooped mid, right? Take that bass back. So lots going on there. Very, very cool. Remember, this is all pedal as preamp. So I'm going to switch my amps. I'm going to turn everything back to noon. You're going to hear just how beefy this pedal is when you run it as your distortion pedal. Let me just flip this and we'll flip the amp. Okay, now we are running into the front of my favorite pedal platform testing amp, the ML Sound Labs Humble. Again, sounds like... So a little bit thicker sound because the amp has a preamp on it. So we don't have to do all the heavy lifting. It's not as dry. So you've got two sets of EQs you can use. And always remember, if you're ever not happy with the way your distortion pedal sounds, you can always run it into the effects return on your amp and use it as a preamp. That's always a possibility. And this, we're also not using any overdrive on any of this, right? This is just the distortion. So we're going to pair this up with the Eris Effects Savage Drive later on, and we're going to hear just how punchy this pedal can get. But as a distortion pedal, it's pretty solid. So here it is, everything at noon. Again, it's distorted, but it's not excessively heavy because we've got the gain at 12 o'clock. Nice sound, right? As always, what happens when we mess with this contour control? Okay, fluffs it out a bit. Pretty solid sounding distortion, right? Come over to the other side. Like I said, it acts like a saturation knob. Take that contour all the way to the top. Now it's heavy. Let's tune that. There we go. Okay. Now, doing what we always do, gain all the way to the top. I mean, yes, it's Marshall tone. It's Marshall tone through a humble. It's kind of cool. That's heavy. That's heavy. Would it go all the way up? It's so good. So there's that little bit of fuzz on the bottom that you can hear. That's the kind of flub that we were cleaning up with the Savage Drive. So this is going to be a really interesting experiment to see what happens when we put these two together. You gotta love that. So that is the Master Effects Martyr Distortion. It is a really great sounding little amp in a box if you want to go straight in as and use it as a preamp, because it really very closely imitates that classic Marshall Valvestate 8100 from back in the 90s. And I've done it here with just going straight in with no EQ except what's on the pedal. But you could see how that could easily become a preamp for a direct link or a direct line any way you wanted to slice it. As a distortion pedal, it does even more because it really, really fattens up once you run it through the preamp on a combo amp, or in this case, a plugin that's mimicking a Dumble style amplifier and 212 combo. So really, really cool pedal. I'm really happy to have this one on the rig. Again, once we pair this up with some overdrives, you're going to hear it's just going to come alive. It's great on its own. Once you start, multiplying these pedals and really, really working with tone, these pedals really, really come into their own. They really speak volumes for the quality of work that's happening among these Canadian pedal builders. So if you like this content, remember to stick around. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this video. Be sure that you're following the playlist, which has all of these pedals, all these pedal demos coming out, as well as following the makers on all of the social media links, which are down in the description. So make sure you're checking those guys out for sure. And stay tuned, because again, starting May 1st, we're going to be running a giveaway to actually give somebody in Canada this entire pedal board. I think right now we're looking at, I think there are 15 pedals on this board or something. It's just a spectacular rig. Anybody who is a guitarist, who's a working guitarist especially, would be really well off getting this, because it's designed to be a workhorse gigging rig. It's got just so many cool things going on, and I am blown away by how incredible these products made in Canada are. They're some of the best pedals I have ever played, and this one is no exception. It is a fantastic pedal. So that's all for today. We're gonna check you guys out next time with some other funky Canadian pedals, and yeah, we're gonna see what we can do once we start getting these into combos. So check it out, and I will see you next time.